The latest generation WRXs have been out for a couple of years now, the VB WRX, the 2022 Plus, when Subaru made a whole bunch of changes to this car which have been highly controversial, from the styling, from the interior, from the cladding, from the engine, a ton of stuff. Now I've had my VB WRX for a little over 6.5 months now. I bought it back in June of 2023. Filming this, it is now January of 2024. So I figured I'd give you my initial thoughts of living with this car for the first 6 months, the things I don't like, the things that have bothered me, the things that I've had to improve, the things that I fixed, and some modifications that I've done. One thing that a lot of people have been super back and forth with on this car is the styling. They're not a fan of the front end, they're not a fan of the rear end, they're not a fan of the cladding. Trust me, I was not a fan of the cladding either at first, but it's weird. After you have the car for a while, the cladding starts to grow on you. You guys have seen, I've done some color matched flares on mine, so the flares are World Rally Blue. They're about 10 millimeters wider. They're from Aeroflow Dynamics. They fit up great. However, the cladding still seems to be a controversial topic for a lot of people. Like I said, after you live with it for a while, it's kind of weird to get rid of the cladding because you get so used to it. You look at the car, you're like, you just learn to accept it. Now, could Subaru have gone the extra mile and actually painted the cladding? Yes, I agree. I think that having potentially just a paint matched option from Subaru would save people money, because if they're financing the car like a lot of us do, you can just roll that aftermarket or that OEM Plus option into the financing of the car. If you don't want to buy it, you can live with the cladding as well. I will say it is a little bit expensive to go the paint match cladding route if that is something that severely bothers you and you are contemplating getting one of these cars. I want to say it's around $800 to $1,000 if you buy the ones from Aeroflow Dynamics, or if you go the route of painting your OEM ones, I want to say it's still right around that range. But having the option to go back to the cladding is nice if you do choose to, if you do get the paint matched option. Now, the other super controversial styling choice of this car is the rear end. I will agree, I am still not a huge fan of it, but honestly, it doesn't bother me, and I don't think it bothers really any other 2022 Plus owners out there. It's another one of those things that you just kind of learn to live with. Will there potentially be a facelift on the 2022 Plus WRXs, and will they come out with another rear end? Probably. And will it probably just bolt up right on since it's Subaru and they're like Legos? Probably will. If the bumper bothers you that much, just don't look at it. Just avoid the rear end as much as you can. But honestly, you learn to live with it. It's really not that bad. Now on my car, I think less is more when it comes to these WRXs. With mine, I kind of opted to go the complete OEM Plus route on this car. I think I've got pretty much the entire Subaru catalog for OEM add-ons on this car. I've got the side skirts, the rear aprons, the front lip, the grille, the fog light bezels, the daytime running lights, the color changing fog lights, which in my opinion are one of the coolest little OEM Plus mods you can do, the rain guards, the STI wing, the STI rear diffuser, and the list goes on. A lot of these little OEM Plus options can really help offset how the car looks if the styling of the car bothers you that much, but you do want one. When it comes to these things, I do think less is more. I've seen people put STI wings on them and they just, in my opinion, look out of place. So if styling is really a big one for you on this car, you definitely can make them look good. It will cost you a little bit of extra money though. A lot of people love the sound of F8 engines. I don't think they sound bad. So we have an ETSJ pipe, we have an AWE touring catback with mufflers and a resonator, and for daily driving use, it's really not too loud. I haven't gotten any complaints from like neighbors, other people that the car is too loud or anything like that. Even revving it up in drive-bys, I don't think it's not bad at all. Keep in mind, there's no launch control and no flat foot shifting yet supported for this car via the access port. So if that's something that you're looking for, you're not gonna find it quite yet. Another nice little OEM feature is the keyless access in the car. If you wanna lock it, you just touch here. If you wanna unlock it, stick your hand in. I don't know why that took me 2 attempts. And then open the door. Lock it, hand in. Maybe it takes 2 attempts because I just locked it. Open. Let me try again. Lock it. All right, let me walk away. I walked away, I'm walking back to the car. Oh, I forgot my phone in my car. Let me come back to it. Let me stick my hand in. There we go. Okay, so I think it's just doing that because I just locked it and then try to unlock it. It doesn't work immediately. So, nice little feature to have. Comes standard on all keyless access models. The other kind of nice thing, which this might have just come with mine, I don't know if this is standard, is mine has these little welcome lights on here. So as you walk up to the car, these little welcome lights and puddle lights turn on. So that way when you open the door, there's a little bit of light on there at night. The mirrors are also heated, and they have it's like an electronic anti-glare in there, or auto dimming. So that way if somebody has super bright high beams and they're bouncing off of your mirror, getting into the cabin and blinding you, they will auto dim, which is actually kind of a cool feature to have. Interior wise in the WRX, there were some things that did kind of bother me with it. Now keep in mind, this is around a $35,000 entry-level sports car. So you're not gonna get all the fancy bits that you'd get with higher end like Audis or things of that nature, BMW and whatnot. So there are options you can do to make the interior feel a little bit better. A couple things that I've done is an Alcantara suede steering wheel, the OEM suede dash and shifter trim bezel pieces that go around the inside of the car. It just gives it a little bit more of a classy feeling when driving it, because a lot of us are going to use these cars for daily drivers. I'm pretty sure about 95% of the people that buy these cars use them as dailies. That's what I use mine for. You'll find corgi hair in my back seat. You'll find other dog hair back there from my other dog. You'll find little bits of trash here and there. So overall, as a daily driver, I really don't feel like it is that bad. I've seen a lot of people complain about the massive screen in the middle of the dash, and I too thought I would hate it at first. But after living with it for 6 months, it really hasn't been all that awful, and I've kind of learned to like it. Now, one thing that does bother me about your center display is the climate controls are built into it. And I will say it is a little bit distracting when driving, having to go into a menu to change where I want the air to blow, if I want it to blow on my feet, or if I want it to blow at my face, or on whatever option I'm changing it to. I have found it to be a little bit cumbersome and a little bit annoying when I'm driving to swap the settings to what I want them to. The response of it overall is actually surprisingly well. It doesn't take too long, there's not a lot of lag, and it has been overall fairly reliable as a Subaru head unit. Now I will say, when I first got this car, this head unit was giving me a lot of problems. There was one point where none of the buttons would work, the touch interface wouldn't work, and it only did this for about 48 hours. After it did that and we got the compatibility back of the head unit, we went through and Subaru had an update out for it. We did the update and it's been solid ever since then. I've lived with this car through both having an Android and an iPhone, and I will say the Android Auto is a little bit more annoying in this car than the Apple CarPlay is. With Android Auto, you only get half of the screen for your Android Auto versus having Apple CarPlay where you get the entire screen to use as Apple CarPlay. I don't know why Subaru has it set up like that. It's like Apple had, I'm a big Samsung guy. I have an iPhone right now, but I'm a big Samsung guy. I think it's a little funny that Subaru kind of prioritizes Apple over Samsung in that matter, because it seems like it would be such an easy thing in software programming for this head unit to be able to just have full screen Android Auto. So that was one thing that did bother me about this head unit, was that Android Auto, not having it as a full screen. But as soon as you have an iPhone, boom, you get full screen. Now, like I said, I use this car as my daily driver. I mentioned earlier you'll find dog hair in here and whatnot. I bring my dogs with me a lot of places. I have a 2-year-old corgi and an 8-year-old little beagle dachshund little dude. And like most dogs do, I'll crack the window for them, and they like to stick their snoot out and get some fresh air and whatnot. They obviously slobber, they drool, they're dogs. And what I've noticed is on the door cards, they stain very easily from even things like just dog slobber or just unnatural things. I mean, I guess they're natural things going on the door, and you can clean it up to a degree, but even cleaning it up, you can still see some discoloration in the plastics. I don't know if this is just from my generation, 2023's, or even just maybe the batch of plastic that my door cards were made out of, but it's just something to keep in mind if you have small kids, if you have dogs that you bring with you. The door cards tend to stain relatively easily. The seats, not so much. The seats are honestly surprisingly holding up well. The 2 dogs being in the back seat a lot of the time, but the door cards for some reason, not so much. Now the other little kind of funny thing in the interior that I've noticed is this car's a manual transmission car, and Subaru has these cameras that they'll normally put up here called EyeSight. EyeSight is typically for the CVT based vehicles. It'll be like your automatic braking, lane assist, that type of stuff. The manual transmissions also have a little camera up there, and it took me a while to figure it out, but it's actually a sensor. If you have your high beams on, it will shut your high beams off when a car is approaching, so that way you're not blinding people, which I honestly kind of enjoy, and I think it's kind of a nice feature. because sometimes when I'm driving with my high beams on, I'll forget they're on, blind people, so the camera will shut them off and then turn them back on after the car has passed. So it's kind of cool. The other thing that still gets me sometimes is the turn stock. I drive a lot of older cars. I have my 1993 RX-7. I have my 2017 STI, which technically isn't an older car, but it's not like this one. And then I also have my 2007 STI. The turn stock on these it doesn't, when you go to change lanes and you take your turn stock on, it returns to center every time. So it doesn't actually stay down until you've turned. And it's just kind of annoying. This was in my 2022 BRZ as well as my 23 WRX. You never fully get used to it, I feel like, because there have been times where I've done like this dance with this turn stock multiple times where after I turn, maybe it won't turn off, and then I sit there and I try to turn it off and I'll go too far and the other side of the blinker will come on, and then I try to bring it back down and then it turns that one on again. So it's just a little bit annoying. Hands-free controls on the steering wheel work great. You've got a ton of different integrated menus in the gauge cluster, such as your fuel economy, a boost gauge, tire pressure. You can have your maps up there. If you have like your Google Maps open and you're going somewhere, it'll bring up your next directions for you. So it's kind of a nice feature to have. I don't use it too much. I normally just keep it on the boost gauge, but it's good to have, I guess, right? Now, the other thing that's new with these Subarus is the FA24 engine. Now, I'm gonna say it's honestly a fantastic engine for anybody who doesn't want to make big power out of a car. If you're a car enthusiast and you buy this car and you're looking for an easy like 400 horsepower, fantastic engine for it. If you're somebody who wants 800 horsepower out of this engine, is it possible? Yes. Should you do it? Probably not. A, there's other platforms that are going to be better for it. B, if you really want to make a Subaru go fast, buy an EJ. The R&D has already been there. It's honestly a little bit cheaper than doing it in these things. Once you get past like the 450 horsepower point, you're kind of looking at needing more fuel, and in order to add more fuel to these, you kind of need a standalone to be able to control port injection. However, I say this with a big however, like I said, for 90 to 95% of us, including myself, we use these as daily drivers. 400 horsepower out of this thing with a couple bolt-ons like an intake, a downpipe, an intercooler, and a tune. Most of us are going to be pretty set with that. And it's honestly a fairly responsive engine that gets somewhat decent gas mileage. I'm not going to say good, but somewhat decent. I average around 22 miles per gallon city and probably about 28 miles per gallon highway if I'm not romping on the car. If you're romping on the car, obviously you're going to get lower fuel economy, but overall it's not bad. Now, when it comes to working on these engines, as you can see, there is a plethora of space in this engine bay, and it's honestly one of the easiest cars that I've had to work on. With it being such a new car, you shouldn't have to work on it, but if you're going down the route of modifying it like I am, and I know some of you guys are saying, why would you modify a brand new car that still has a warranty, X, Y, and Z things? It's what we do, okay? We like to take things apart. We like to make them go faster. We like to add other things in there. Keep in mind, it will 100% void your warranty if you do the stuff that I've done, but I mean, I can fix it if it breaks. It's just, if you plan on going down the rabbit hole of wanting to work on these things, keep in mind, this is honestly the easiest Subaru for turbo models to work on. Everything is incredibly accessible. Spark plugs are right there. There's a mile right there to be able to do the spark plug, so it's not like doing it on an older EJ turbo car. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit easier to work on, this is honestly probably a pretty good option for you. Something else that I feel like is important to touch on is I have had some problems with the car, some of them not necessarily being, it's not an OEM problem, it's an aftermarket option, but I know a lot of people are going to modify these cars like myself have done, like a lot of other people have done. I was having a weird issue with the car where the accelerator pedal would no longer work until I changed gears, which is a very odd problem. And we ended up tracking that down to it being the aftermarket third brake light that I added in the back, which is why you'll see in some of those clips where the brake light wasn't on, the third brake light wasn't on, but the other brake lights were. Now what's happening is water is getting into that brake light and it's shorting to ground, activating the brake light, making the ECU think that I'm braking when I'm not. And in these cars on stock ECMs, you cannot brake boost. If you hit the gas and the brake at the same time, the gas isn't going to work. So the car was thinking I was braking when I wasn't braking, so when I was cruising, it wouldn't allow me to use the gas pedal. So I could just be going like cruising in third gear at like 35 miles an hour and the gas pedal would just stop working up until I changed gears again. Weird problem, something to keep in mind. Now the other problem that I was having, and this is only if you plan on tuning the car, we are tuned, we have an intake, a downpipe, an intercooler, And that's pretty much it. Right now we're sitting between probably 350 and 360 wheel horsepower and probably around that 380 foot-pound torque mark. So I'm guessing that when we dynoed the car, the dyno wasn't working properly. So that's kind of what my dyno guess is until it goes back on a dyno that works. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you're tuning, you may get a check engine light for, it's like an ECM fault code, and that ECM fault code is just a threshold limit that you've exceeded. I panicked. I thought my ECU was bricked. I was freaking out. I mean, I can fix it, but obviously if your ECU shits the bed, it's kind of a big deal. So just keep that in mind. If you see like an ECU fault code like that, it may not be a bad ECU. It could just be that you've exceeded a threshold. Typically it would happen to me whenever I'd go to get into high boost or just like get into boost, the car would freak out. So aside from that, I really haven't had like too many other issues with the car. It's just been the head unit at first, and then some aftermarket options. On the OEM side of things, it's been fantastic. It's been reliable, it's been easy to drive, it's been fun to drive, but for some reason, I find myself wanting something else. It's like it's a little bit too toned down for me or too tamed for me from Subaru. But I'm gonna hold on to the car for a little bit longer just to see if that kind of passes, and maybe I'm just kind of in a weird spot with the car and keep it, because I do like the car. I think they've got potential. Let's go drive it. We're tuned to about 23 PSI on pump gas. The car is fun, it rips, it gets down, it boogies, it shakes your knees, it jingles, and I'm getting a bit cold out here. So let's go play with it. One thing that still bothers me is the red line on the car and how fast it comes up. Ours is set to 6,400, factory it's set to 6,100, but it comes up so quick. I'm so used to driving cars that have red lines above that, like even into the 7,000, 7,500, 8,000 point. That 61, 6,400, whether you're stock or tuned, it just comes up so quick and it bothers me. The other thing that kind of sucks with these cars is the stock brakes. I will tell you, you can experience brake fade quick if you are on these brakes a lot and if you're dogging on the car a good amount. Stock, just driving around town, the brakes are just fine, but as soon as you start getting into that performance side of the car, the stock brakes do seem to give out relatively quick on you. You can do things like pads, rotors, big brake kits, things like that, and it does help clean it up quite a bit, but factory, it's very lackluster for brakes and redline. They both just kind of suck. So just some final thoughts on the car after 6 months of ownership. I think for the average car enthusiast who wants a car that's all-wheel drive, turbo, 4 doors, comfy, still has a lot of amenities, heated seats, Apple CarPlay, things like that, and is sub $40,000 because I'm including like tax, title, license if you go and buy one brand new for like $35,000. I think it's a fantastic option. I think it's a car that'll last you a long time. Keep in mind with these direct injection engines, because there is no port injection, you will have to get the valves cleaned every, I want to say 30,000 miles. Subaru offers a slow induction service that you can go do, or you can have the valves walnut blasted to be able to get all that carbon buildup off. So keep that in mind if this is something that you were looking at. Every 30,000 miles or so, you're going to need to get the valves cleaned. But overall, I'm 7,000 miles into this thing. I've been enjoying it. It's been, like I said, reliable. It's been fun. Hasn't really given me any OEM side issues. It has given me some aftermarket problems, but that's no fault of the car. That's fault of just some aftermarket stuff. You can make the cars look good. It does. I will say it kind of sucks that you do have to spend a decent amount of money to make them look good. In stock form, I agree. I don't think they look good at all in stock form. They definitely need a good amount of love to look good, but if you can get past the rear bumpers or the cladding on the fenders, once you lower it down like we did, it's really not that bad. So with that, that's all I really got for you guys on this one. Overall, after 6 months, I'm happy with the car. Like I said, I am kind of struggling on whether or not I want to keep it and move to something else, or just enjoy the car a little bit longer. So I'm just going to keep driving it around for now. Enjoy the car as it is, maybe do a couple little more additions here and there. There is still some more stuff in the OEM Plus side of things that I do want to add to this car. So we'll go down that rabbit hole, we'll add some more stuff on it, and we'll kind of see where I end up with it. But with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you liked the video, if this video helped you in deciding whether or not you want to get one or whether you don't want to get one, or maybe you have one and you're just also stuck on the fence of do you want to keep it, do you want to get rid of it, like the video. If you dislike the video, feel free to dislike the video. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Might hurt your feelings, but doesn't hurt my feelings. But with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.